Today we are going to interview the candidate from GroenLinks, Dirk-Jan Koch. Thank you for coming to have an interview with us. We have some questions for you. And the first one is, could you briefly describe the party goals to us?
Excellent. Yeah, well, thanks for interviewing me. I really appreciate it. So, GroenLinks means green and left. And basically we are a progressive party focusing on sustainability as well. So we think it's important to really combat climate change and other environmental issues. And secondly, that we share more. We see that the divide between those who are well off and those who aren't well off is widening, and that's what we're trying to reduce. So green and left.
Thank you. I have seen some ambitious goals, such as the high-speed trains between the capitals of the member states, and I was wondering, who would you propose to pay for that? Is it the nation states who pay, or the EU as the supranational organizations?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a very good question. What we see, that there's now unfair competition between the planes and the trains. Planes, we don't pay value-added tax. Even for the fuel they use, they don't need to pay any extra taxes. Whereas for the trains, everything is taxed. So that's why you can fly to Barcelona for 19 euros, and if you want to take the train, you're 250 euros. So I understand that students, everybody is saying, okay, yeah, let's take the plane. So what we say is that we should tax on the planes more, like we do the trains. Then you get a little bit of money from that, and that you can invest in the train system. So then it becomes more attractive. So, I think it needs to be a combination of national governments and European governments who pays for it. But the most important thing is that we think that polluting industries, polluting companies, they should pay more taxes.
Thank you. Also, another point which was mentioned on your campaign is that the coal power stations shall be reduced and completely destroyed by 2030.
Yeah.
And it's a very ambitious goal, for sure. It's something that the environment really needs. But such huge coal states as Germany, for instance, have said that they can only do it by 2038. How do you combat this national states trying to avoid destroying their coal plants?
Yeah, it's tough, and we also realize there's people working there, so you really, what we always suggest is that you need to have a transition, but you need to have an equitable transition, so you need to take everybody along, so it cannot mean that suddenly as an individual you have to pay way more money, and it shouldn't mean that, you just lose your job in the coal station and we don't help to find you a new job, so you need to really take that into consideration. But at the same time, we think that if we organize it in a European way, it can go faster. Because in the south of Europe, we have lots of sun. In the north of Europe, we have lots of hydropower. In the west of Europe, we have lots of wind power. If we get better interconnected grids, electricity grids, we can also really make sure that those states, such as Germany and Poland, with now a lot of coal, can make this transition faster. So we need to really invest in those grids, so that as a Europe as a whole we can make this transition faster.
Thank you. In the next question, I'm sorry for my Dutch, but in the stemwijzer, or for the English-speaking people, the vote match, the GroenLinks and the PvdA allegedly had the same answers to all the questions, and how is it that both parties are so different and yet their questions are similar?
Yeah. I think it's a very good question, and your Dutch is excellent, don't worry. So, no, I think indeed in the first version of that program where you can check your votes, the 30 questions they asked, our answers were the same. So what you indeed see is that our election program looks quite alike. But then you have to see what actually happens when people are in parliament, and there we see big differences. So you see that if you do the tracking of the votes, you see that, for instance, on climate, we have been much more progressive than the PvdA in Europe. So in general, I think that our election programs look pretty much alike, but then the degree to which we are willing to do compromises afterwards differs. You know, they are easier, they are willing to let go to some of their core principles, to be part of a government, to be part of a commission, where we say, well, we're only going to do it if we really feel that 80% of our wishes are met. So yes, we're very much alike in the election programs, but there's more than just the election programs.
Thank you. Also, how do you think the party will be able to realize the climate goals it has set itself while it has been behind on the realization of the same goals for the decades before?
Yeah, so I think this is really where we need to have the biggest change, you know. So what we see is that a lot of politicians, they talk and they say, yeah, let's do this or let's reduce, but then also in the Netherlands, what we've seen it in the end, the change is not forthcoming, right? So therefore we really suggest that now the young people go out to vote and really show that they really are serious about climate change, and that now they cannot no longer ignore the Greens, because in the past at the European level the Green Party was too small, so the Socialists and the Christian Democrats could just go on and they didn't need our support. They did not need our support, and now if we grow they will need our support and we can push it through. And why will it happen this time and not before? I think what we realize as the Greens is that we also need to have a system change. For instance, we see that the fossil fuel industry has still a lot of lobbying power. So we say, we cannot only just sit in the environment committee and then everything will be perfect. No, we really have to look at how we can change the system. For instance, the lobby system, that fossil fuel companies can no longer have access to all as parliamentarians, or that as a parliamentarian you cannot just have a side job, an extra job for a company, what you see now. So we, in that sense, we think it's the environmental transition has to come also with a different transition in the field of how you do politics.
And the environmental transition, which we all know to be very important, especially right now for the planet, how would you get the votes of the business owners or the private owners who don't really want to give up their maybe not so sustainable ways of conducting their businesses? How would you inspire them to vote?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, at the Green Party we do have people from all walks of life. So we have a lot of people who work for government, but also a lot of people who have businesses. And I think that they also realize that all the natural hazards which are now coming their way isn't good for business either. And they also increasingly see that greening the economy is also a business opportunity. In terms of innovation, in terms of extra employment. So we don't see this an opposition between business and transition. No, we think it can go hand in hand.
Also, as a Green Party, we have a variety of goals which are for sure very important to achieve. And we know that the time span in the European Parliament is not so long. What are the prime goals which we want to bring in this term of the European Parliament?
Yeah, well, I'm happy at least it's 5 years, right? So, and the Parliament always stays 5 years. It's not like in other parliaments, but sometimes after 2 years the government falls and the Parliament has to go away. So you know you have 5 years, and what I will focus on is taxation issues. Because what I have seen that there's a lot of tax avoidance, and you see that really governments are all lowering their profit taxes because they think they can attract businesses. So you see this race to the bottom, and in the meantime we see that there's less and less money available to invest in the public sector. So I think this is really something we have to tackle at the EU level. And one thing I would really like to achieve in those 5 years is that there's one minimum profit tax for companies. You know, let's say put it at 25% or 30%, but at least that companies can no longer say, if you do this, I'll go to another country. No, because they know that everywhere it's the same. And this will give us more space to really invest in the public sector, which is really needed.
right now, with the election coming up, you must be very busy. And could you describe like one day from your life as a politician right now?
Good indeed. Well, it's a bit busy time because I already have 2 jobs. You know, I am a diplomat, so I work at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and for 4 days a week. And then I'm also a professor at university in Nijmegen, at the Radboud University, in International Trade and Development Cooperation. And now this running for the European Parliament is like a 3rd job. You know, so yeah, it was a bit crazy, to be honest, because the debates. That every night there's another debate that I'm debating with the other candidate, and it's very specialized, you know. Sometimes it's about my viewpoints on the Israel-Palestina conflict, and then the next day it is on the smoking in the European Union, what you do on smoking. So no, I realized it was too much. So I said to my employer, can I please have 1 month break? So from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they gave me 1 month break. And so I have a bit more time. So how my day looks like is that during the day I'm correcting homework from my students and master thesis and PhD thesis. That's in the morning. In the afternoon I prepare my debates, and in the evenings I have the debates. So that's how it looks like.
Thank you so much for answering our questions. Thank you for coming to have an interview with us. That was, I guess, the end of it.